Okay, so today we're exploring something that is just absolutely fascinating. We're going to look at how a single colossal piece of infrastructure didn't just change a nation's geography, but actually managed to fundamentally alter its military posture and its nuclear doctrine. Now, we're talking about the Three Gorges Dam here, but we're not just going to be looking at it as a giant power station. No, we are diving into its role as the ultimate strategic paradox, at once a shield and a sword.
To really grasp the sheer gravity of this, I want to start with a question that might sound, well, completely unbelievable. Why run a simulated atomic test against a dam that won't even be built for another 36 years? Seriously, let that sink in for a second. Back in 1958, Premier Zhou Enlai, who was one of the most powerful figures of the Cold War, personally directed simulated nuclear strikes on a purely hypothetical dam on the Yangtze River. The Chinese leadership didn't just decide to build a massive dam, they actively wargamed it against nuclear bombardment before a single block of concrete was ever poured. To understand why in the world they would do this, we kind of have to go back to the beginning.
Section 1. The Shield, Necessity and Obsession.
Long before this dam was ever considered a potential military target, it was born out of a desperate existential necessity for survival. 18.9 million. To put that staggering number into perspective, that represents the amount of people displaced in 1954 when massive floods on the Yangtze River just absolutely devastated the region. The human toll was unimaginable. Over 33,000 people were killed. The entire city of Wuhan was completely submerged for 3 whole months. You see, this wasn't just a natural disaster. It was a profound crisis of national survival, and it served as the raw catalyst for the massive geopolitical gambit that followed.
That specific disaster sparked a powerful, almost mythical vision. Just 2 years after those tragic floods, Mao Zedong wrote a poem titled Swimming, which included this incredibly famous line: "A great stone wall to catch the clouds and rains of Wushan as they fall, a great lake shall rise upon the gorge." And this wasn't just some poetry. This quote, which was literally engraved on the 1954 flood memorial in Wuhan, became the revolutionary scripture for taming nature. From that point on, the dam really transformed into an article of faith for the leadership. It became the ultimate symbol of control over the environment.
And this wasn't just some fleeting idea. It was literally a 70-year obsession. From Sun Yat-sen's initial proposal way back in 1919 all the way to its actual completion in 2006. For almost an entire century, this project commanded absolute, sustained political focus. It survived changing regimes, huge ideological shifts, revolutions, purges, and even economic collapse. It really was the one constant in modern Chinese political history. But as we're going to see, that level of determination came with a terrifying realization.
Moving right along to Section 2. Testing a hypothetical dam.
The leadership knew that taming the Yangtze meant creating something totally unprecedented, and that meant they had to prepare for the absolute worst-case scenario. This is where the story gets truly wild. Premier Zhou Enlai didn't just rely on chalkboard math. He quite literally ran simulated atomic bomb detonations against a dam concept that did not even exist yet. They used physical-chemical explosions to simulate conventional bombardment and modeled intense downstream structural failures. Think about the sheer paranoia of that for a second. They were actively testing the survivability of concrete in a full-blown nuclear war decades before they even poured a single foundation.
So you might be asking, why the extreme paranoia? Well, put yourself in their shoes during the Cold War. During the Korean War, which was a very fresh memory in 1958, American bombers had specifically targeted the Shupung power station on the Yalu River. This taught the Chinese leadership a very harsh, unforgettable lesson. Hydroelectric dams are prime military targets. They realized that if they were going to build the biggest dam in human history, they absolutely had to know it could survive an enemy attack.
And what actually came of those war games? Well, while the full data has never been publicly disclosed, official statements are incredibly revealing. Zhang Boting, from the China Society for Hydropower Engineering, publicly stated that the concrete gravity dam is resistant to nuclear attacks. In fact, even a senior Taiwanese military advisor has publicly dismissed the idea of missile attacks, noting that the high-strength reinforced concrete could withstand a small nuclear weapon. So from day one, this wasn't just a civilian project. We are looking at military-grade infrastructure.
Which brings us to Section 3. The ultimate strategic target.
Here is the core geopolitical paradox of our explainer. In their monumental quest to build the ultimate shield against nature, the Chinese leadership inevitably created the ultimate sword, pointed right back at themselves. Imagine being a military planner and realizing that your country's greatest architectural achievement is simultaneously its biggest vulnerability. As civilian infrastructure, it protects 100 million people downstream and generates a massive amount of power. But as a military target, its destruction actively threatens those exact same 100 million people. Basically, the more important the dam becomes to the nation's survival, the more valuable it becomes to an adversary.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. It's a very real geopolitical friction point. Back in 2004, a U.S. Department of Defense report explicitly identified the Three Gorges Dam as a high-value target that Taiwanese military planners might consider striking in order to deter Chinese military coercion. The dam officially entered the international crosshairs, explicitly named in foreign military assessments.
Unsurprisingly, the response to that U.S. report was, well, furious. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a very strong diplomatic rebuke, asserting that the U.S. had a Cold War mentality harboring evil intentions. This fierce response clearly demonstrates the extreme sensitivity and the immense strategic stakes surrounding the dam's security. It is viewed as a red line of the absolute highest order.
And the military rhetoric definitely matched the diplomatic outrage. PLA Lieutenant General Liu Yuan delivered a really stark warning, stating that targeting the dam will not be able to stop war, and instead will have the exact opposite of the desired effect. He made it extremely clear that China was seriously on guard against such threats, ratcheting up the tension and heavily implying that any attack on the dam would trigger massive catastrophic retaliation.
Section 4. Debating China's nuclear doctrine.
You see, the most profound consequence of the Three Gorges Dam's existence isn't even the electricity it generates. It's how it has sparked a debate about shifting the very foundational rules of Chinese warfare. To understand this shift, we kind of need to quickly define China's strict no first use, or NFU, policy. This is a foundational pledge by a nuclear-armed state that they will not use nuclear weapons unless an adversary attacks them with nuclear weapons first. It is a massive cornerstone of their publicly stated strategic deterrence.
But the dam introduces a massive, honestly terrifying exception. And this has sparked one of the most fascinating debates among Chinese strategic scholars today. The question is this: if an adversary uses conventional weapons to destroy the Three Gorges Dam, causing mass civilian casualties equivalent to a nuclear weapon, shouldn't that trigger a nuclear response? A lot of scholars argue that destroying the dam equates to an existential strike on the state itself, meaning the dam's very existence potentially nullifies, or at the very least deeply complicates, the no-first-use policy. Think about that. A piece of concrete infrastructure is literally reshaping nuclear doctrine.
And that leads right into Section 5, preparing for destruction. So, what actually happens if deterrence fails? How did the engineers and the planners prepare for the horrifying possibility that the dam's defenses, both the concrete ones and the nuclear ones, might actually fail? Let's walk through the grim downstream contingency plan. Step 1. The dam defenses are breached. Step 2. The colossal rush of floodwaters instantly channels toward the city of Shaji, which is 340 kilometers downstream. Step 3. Designated flood diversion areas are actively flooded to drop the catastrophic water level significantly within just 2 days. It is a literal ticking clock. They systematically prepared for the dam's destruction at the exact same time they were engineering its success.
And that brings us all the way back to the ultimate lesson of those 1958 nuclear tests. The leadership knew from the very beginning that absolute safety is impossible. Only managed risk is achievable. They knew without a shadow of a doubt that they were building the most dangerous single structure in their country, a structure that could be transformational, sure, but also potentially fatal. And they decided to build it anyway.
So I really want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Building the Three Gorges Dam with full knowledge of its geopolitical and nuclear implications, knowing the massive risk and deciding it was worth taking, is that extraordinary strategic courage, or is it extraordinary strategic hubris? We frankly won't know the true answer until the dam is tested by something it wasn't designed to survive. I would absolutely love to hear what you all think. Does the nuclear angle change how you view this massive piece of infrastructure? Drop your thoughts down in the comments, and be sure to subscribe because in our next explainer, we're going to dive into the geological faults beneath the dam that even the best engineers in the world can't control. See you there.